The warning came on a perfect spring morning. On April 23, 2026, air raid sirens wailed across the valleys of Pierce County, Washington. At their signal, over 45,000 students were pulled from their classrooms. Not for a fire drill, not for an earthquake drill. For something else. Something the region has spent decades preparing for. They walked. In long, orderly lines they moved from their schools, heading for high ground. This was the world's largest coordinated lahar evacuation drill, a dress rehearsal for a catastrophe. A horrifyingly rational response to a threat that most of the country has never heard of. Right now, over 150,000 people live, work, and commute directly in the path of a geological weapon aimed at them from 410 feet. They live on land formed by the weapon itself, and they know, with chilling certainty, that the next time the sirens sound it, it may not be a drill. It will be a warning that they have as little as 45 minutes before their world is buried under a wall of wet concrete moving at highway speeds. Not a mudslide, not a flood. Obliteration, gone. Completely gone. So the real question is, how do you save a population that chose to build its homes in the kill zone of the most dangerous volcano in North America? And what happens when the mountain doesn't even need to erupt to unleash its worst? From a distance, Mount Rainier is magnificent. It dominates the skyline south of Seattle, a vision of permanent, unmoving strength. Snow-capped, serene, a postcard. That image is a lie. The mountain, known as Tahoma to the region's native peoples, is not solid. It's rotting from the inside out. For centuries, heat and acidic gases from the volcano's magmatic plumbing have been seeping up through the rock. This isn't a sign of an imminent eruption. It's something far more insidious. These gases have been mixing with groundwater, creating a potent sulfuric acid that is relentlessly dissolving the mountain's core. The process is called hydrothermal alteration. It turns hard, stable volcanic rock into weak, slippery clay. On top of that rotten core sits more glacial ice than all the other Cascade volcanoes combined. An inconceivable weight of frozen water grinding down on an unstable foundation. This is the recipe for a unique kind of disaster, unlike Mount St. Helens, which gave weeks of seismic warnings before it blew its side in 1980. Rainier's greatest threat may come with no warning at all. An earthquake, even a minor one, could shake a massive, clay-saturated flank of the mountain loose. Or a period of unseasonable heat could rapidly melt surface ice, creating a landslide. No magma needs to move. No eruption needs to happen. Gravity and internal decay are enough. The moment a collapse begins, the physics are unforgiving. Billions of tons of rock, glacier ice, and soil would instantly liquefy. This is a lahar, an Indonesian term that fails to capture the sheer violence of the event. A moving lahar looks and behaves like a churning slurry of wet concrete filled with boulders the size of houses and the shredded remains of ancient forests. It does not flow like water. It scours the earth, pulverizing everything in its path. On the steep upper slopes of Rainier, these flows can reach speeds of 45 to 50 miles per hour, funneled by the river valleys that radiate from the mountain like the barrel of a gun. The Puyallup River Valley. The White River Valley. These are not just landscapes, they are delivery chutes. And history proves they have been used before. About 5,600 years ago, a massive section of Mount Rainier collapsed. The event created something called the Osceola Mudflow. It was a lahar of unimaginable scale. The USGS estimates its volume was 3.8 cubic kilometers. To put that in terms that mean something, that is enough material to bury the entire city of Seattle under a block of concrete nearly 3,000 feet thick. This flow was so massive it traveled over 60 miles, burying the river valleys, filling in a major arm of Puget Sound and creating the very land where the Port of Tacoma and countless suburbs now stand. The Osceola Mudflow was not a footnote in geologic history. It was a world-altering event that created the modern map of the region. And it was not a one-time occurrence. Much more recently, around the year 1507, another major collapse happened. It triggered the Electron Mudflow. This one was smaller, but still catastrophic, estimated at 260 million cubic meters. For years, scientists debated what caused it. Then, the answer came from the man who knows Rainier's pulse better than anyone. Seth Moran, a volcanoseismologist at the Uskes Cascades Volcano Observatory. He confirmed what local emergency managers had long feared. All of the lahars that have come down into the Puget lowlands in the last 6,000 years have started with an eruption, Moran stated, except for the most recent one. Researchers found no evidence of an eruption associated with the electron mudflow. The mountain simply fell apart. The proof of this event isn't just in rock samples. Construction crews digging foundations in the Puyallup Valley constantly unearth its victims, massive, perfectly preserved stumps of old growth trees, snapped off and buried upright 5 centuries ago by a wave of mud that entombed an entire forest. The land that people in these valleys live on is not just land. It is a graveyard. After the ancient lahars came and went, they left something behind. Perfectly flat, incredibly fertile land in the river valleys. Prime real estate. So, people built farms, then homes, then towns, then entire cities. They built directly on top of the deposits left by the Osceola and electron mudflows. An entire civilization has risen from the rubble of previous apocalypses, seemingly unaware that they have placed themselves directly in the path of the next one. Today, that puts an estimated 150,000 residents in the direct line of fire. Their homes, their schools, their lives are built on a foundation of monumental risk. A risk summed up by former USC scientist Kevin Scott with a quote that should chill every single homeowner in the valley. Homes in this area are in greater risk of being hit by a mudflow from Mount Rainier than of catching on fire. And in the center of that risk lies a town that is a perfect topographical trap. Orting, Washington, population, approximately 9,000. The town sits in the valley floor, wedged between the Puyallup and Carbon rivers. To an emergency planner, its location is a nightmare. To a geologist, it is an inevitability. The entire town is built on layers of a previous lahar. It is, in the words of its former fire chief Scott Fielding, ground zero. There are only 2 main bridges providing escape routes out of the valley floor. When a lahar siren sounds, those bridges will become parking lots in minutes. The official models, run on advanced computer simulations by USG scientists David George and Richard Iverson, are brutally clear. Their declaw software treats a lahar not as a simple flood, but as a complex, fluid, dynamic event, mapping how the slurry will behave based on its density and saturation. The results for Orting are catastrophic. A major lahar, triggered by a collapse on the mountain's western flank, would reach the edge of town in under 45 minutes. 45 minutes. To evacuate thousands of people from a geographic bowl with almost no exits. Emergency planning for Orting is based on a stark reality. Driving is not an option. Survival means abandoning your car, abandoning your home, and walking or running uphill. The town has established and clearly marked pedestrian evacuation routes. The school district, along with its neighboring districts, practices the April 26th drill with military precision. They have accepted a truth that few other American communities have to contemplate. When the disaster comes, technology will not save you. Your own 2 feet are your only hope. But Orting is just the beginning. The lahar doesn't stop there. As it moves out of the steeper valleys and hits the flatter lowlands, it will spread out but lose little of its destructive force. The declaw models show the more clay from the hydrothermally altered rock, the more mobile the lahar remains, behaving like a hyperliquid even as it slows. The next city in its path is Puyallup, a major suburban hub of over 43,000 people, home to the Washington State Fair, a bustling downtown, and miles of residential neighborhoods, all sitting squarely in the inundation zone. Then comes Sumner, Fife, Auburn, and Pacific, towns straddling the border between Pierce and King counties. Further north in the White River Valley, the towns of Buckley and Enumclaw face a similar threat from a different drainage. All told, 8 major population centers wait for the mud. The flow would eventually swamp the industrial tide flats of the Port of Tacoma before finally spilling into Commencement Bay, just as the Osceola mudflow did thousands of years ago. We are not guessing where it will go. The mountain has painted the map for us with the disasters of its past. The knowledge of this threat is not new. Local leaders and scientists have understood the risk for decades, but understanding the problem and solving it are two vastly different things. Believing you are prepared and surviving a 100-foot-high wall of moving concrete are separated by a gulf of terrifying uncertainty. Something had to be built, a line of defense against the inevitable. The question was whether any human system could react faster than the mountain. The plan was a desperate technological gamble, a race against physics. In 1998, the USGs installed the first generation of the Mount Rainier lahar detection system. It was a groundbreaking piece of engineering for its time. A network of acoustic flow monitors, essentially seismic microphones, were buried along the riverbeds in Mount Rainier National Park. They were designed to listen for the specific ground-shaking frequency of a lahar, a low rumbling signature distinct from an earthquake or a simple flood. If triggered, the system would automatically send a radio signal to emergency management hubs in Pierce County, which would then activate the warning sirens. It was a brilliant idea, and it was almost immediately obsolete. The system relied on 1990s radio telemetry. The delay between the monitors triggering and the signal being confirmed could be up to 2 minutes. When you only have 45 minutes to begin with, 2 minutes is an eternity. Furthermore, the original system only protected the Puyallup River Valley. The Nisqually and Carbon River drainages, which also posed a direct threat to communities, were left effectively blind. For years, the system was a comfort, but one built on compromises that everyone quietly knew were insufficient. The mountain was a 21st century threat being monitored by 20th century technology. Then came the swarm. On July 8, 2025, exactly 1 year ago, the seismometers on Mount Rainier began to light up. It wasn't one or two tremors. It was a swarm of earthquakes, unlike anything ever recorded at the volcano. At its peak, the Pacific Northwest Seismic Network was registering 40 small quakes per hour. The largest, a magnitude 2.42, was tiny by tectonic standards, but the sheer quantity of events put every emergency manager in the region on high alert. Was this it? Was magma finally on the move? For weeks, the mountain trembled. The USG's Cascades Volcano Observatory worked around the clock, analyzing every signal. By late August 2025, the swarm subsided, and the observatory issued its official notice. The quakes were not magmatic. They were caused by movements in the volcano's extensive hydrothermal system, the very system that's rotting the mountain from within. The immediate threat of eruption was low. But the warning was clear. The mountain was alive, shifting, and capable of generating intense seismic activity without ever threatening to erupt. The swarm of 2025 served as a brutal reminder that a non-eruptive, landslide-triggered lahar was a live possibility. The old warning system was no longer a theoretical problem. It was an active danger. So, between 2024 and 2026, the entire system was torn out and rebuilt from the ground up. Overseen by Seth Moran and his team at the USGs, the upgrade was a massive undertaking. The new network is a web of cutting-edge sensors, real-time broadband seismometers that can distinguish between different types of seismic waves, infrasound sensors that listen for the low-frequency atmospheric pressure waves generated by a massive landslide, GPS stations measuring ground deformation to the millimeter, and arrays of tripwires strung across the canyons designed to be physically snapped by a lahar, providing an undeniable, instantaneous signal. The biggest change was the speed. The new system transmits data via modern cellular and satellite links, cutting the 2-minute transmission delay down to near real time. Those 2 minutes, bought at the cost of millions of dollars and an immense engineering effort, could mean the difference between life and death for thousands. Today, 42 dedicated outdoor lahar warning sirens are positioned across the Puyallup and Nisqually River valleys. They are tested at noon on the first Monday of every month, a sound that has become a familiar, ominous part of life. And they don't just wail. The upgraded sirens, managed by the Pierce County Department of Emergency Management, feature voice warnings in both English and Spanish. They are also equipped with flashing lights, a critical feature designed to alert the hearing impaired. It is the most advanced, multi-layered volcanic mudflow warning system on the planet. The engineering had worked. The impossible had been built. But it also produced an unsettling realization. All this technology, all this expense, all this planning was to buy minutes, not hours, not days. Minutes, the system is built, the drills are practiced, the sirens are ready, and none of it might be enough. The fundamental problem of the valleys has not changed. The roads will gridlock. That is not a theory, it is a certainty acknowledged by every emergency planner involved. That is why the drills, like the one coordinated by the East Pierce Interlocal Coalition Emergency Management Team, are focused on pedestrian evacuation. The posters on the evacuation routes don't show cars, they show a family walking up a hill. It is a primal, almost pre-industrial solution to a 21st century problem. The uncomfortable question that the entire system forces into the open is whether it provides a real chance at survival, or simply the illusion of one. Can you really get 45,000 students to high ground in time? Can you get the elderly, the disabled, the panicked, out of the inundation zone before a slurry of rock and ice moving at 50 miles per hour arrives? The sirens, for all their technological sophistication, are only as good as the human response to them. How many people will hear them and freeze? How many will try to gather belongings? How many will get in their cars, convinced they can outrun it, and in doing so, doom themselves and everyone behind them? The science itself presents the final, humbling uncertainty. The DCLAW simulations by George and Iverson are the best in the world, but they are still models. They make assumptions about volume, water content, and the exact failure point on the mountain. A larger than expected collapse, or one with a higher saturation of that slippery, hydrothermally altered clay, could produce a lahar that is even faster, even more mobile than the official worst-case scenario. The 45-minute timeline to Orting is an estimate. It is not a guarantee. Climate change adds another layer of dread. As regional temperatures rise, Rainier's colossal glaciers are melting at an accelerated rate. This not only adds more water to the already unstable system, but the loss of glacial ice can actually destabilize the rock slopes it once buttressed. A mountain that is already rotting from the inside is now being weakened from the outside. 2. The 2025 earthquake swarm proved the mountain is restless. The constant melting proves it's vulnerable. It feels less like a matter of if, and more a matter of when. The 8 towns, Orting, Puyallup, Sumner, Fife, Auburn, Pacific, Buckley, and Enumclaw, live with this knowledge every single day. They live in a strange state of hyper-preparedness and quiet denial. They practice for the apocalypse on sunny spring mornings. They hear the monthly siren tests and go about their business. They have built their lives in a beautiful place that could, with less than an hour's notice, cease to exist. They have built the world's most advanced warning system. They have drilled the world's largest evacuation. They have done everything humanly possible to out-engineer a force of nature. But the mountain is still there. 14,410 feet of ice and rotten rock, holding a potential energy that dwarfs any preparation. The sirens buy time. The drills build instinct. But they do not solve the mountain.